that we have been preparing for more than a month now. And finally, we're very happy that all the facets are in there, and we have a collection of good speakers in this area. First of all, about the area, we thought that there's a puzzle or a question that came to our mind, that innovation before COVID, after COVID. After the recession of COVID, is innovation in general going to be handled the same way before, or there has to be a paradigm shift or a change in mentality or changing in approach to deal with innovation, whether we are talking about government policymakers, private sector policymakers, or we're NGOs, international organizations, including UN organizations. So this is the idea behind having this webinar. So without wasting more time, let me introduce Mr. Munir Thabit, the Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCWA, who will speak certain words at the beginning of this seminar, which will be for about, it's scheduled for 1 hour 45 minutes. After his speech, I will say a few words about the program, and then we will start with the speakers. So please, Mr. Thabit, if you may start.
Thank you, Haider. I was asked to prepare my talks in Arabic. Even though I'm more at ease in English, I will go ahead بالعربي.
Please.
أولاً السلام عليكم جميعاً.
وعليكم السلام.
وأهلا وسهلا بكم في لقائنا اليوم حول موضوع مركزي ومهم قد يساهم في الإجابة على السؤال الذي يدور في أذهان الجميع، ألا وهو المستقبل ما بعد كورونا ودور الابتكار في صياغة هذا المستقبل. أعتقد أن جائحة كورونا هي مفصلية لدرجة تستحق أن تكون محطة تاريخية يتكون حولها سرد أو حديث أو ناراتيف ما قبل الكورونا وما بعده، يعني BCAC. ما يجعل الكورونا مفصلية هو ليس البعد الطبي الوقائي العلاجي للوباء مع أهميته، إنما ما كشفت عنه الكورونا من قوة وضعف وتشابك للاقتصادات العالمية. لن ندخل بالتحليل العميق للأزمة، وسنكتفي بعرض بعضاً مما كشفت عنه الجائحة. أولاً، التعليم عن بعد والحلول للأزمات الصحية عن بعد أصبحت أقرب لواقع أن تكون بمتناول الجميع أكثر مما كانت عليه سابقاً، وهي ستكون بالضرورة جزء من المستقبل. ثانياً، الاقتصادات الوطنية هي مرتبطة في بعضها بشكل عميق ومعقد، فانتكاسة في اقتصاد معين يعني أيضاً انتكاسات في الكثير من الاقتصادات الأخرى، ولكن العكس ليس بالضرورة دائماً صحيحاً. فنهضة باقتصاد معين لا يترجم دائماً بالضرورة لنهضة باقتصادات أخرى. ثالثاً، شروط التجارة العالمية عليها تسهيل موضوعي الأمن الغذائي والأمن الطبي. رابعاً، الخروج من الأزمة لابد أن يكون عن طريق تضافر الجهود والتضامن العالمي والإقليمي والمحلي، فالحل لا يمكن أن يكون عند فريق معين مهما كانت مكانته وقوته الاقتصادية والعلمية. خامساً، تكنولوجيا المعلومات لها دور محوري في أي حل مستقبلي، وهذا طبعاً أمر واضح ومفروغ منه. سادساً، نستطيع أن نقول أن الأزمة اليوم تشكل فرصة تاريخية لإعادة البناء بشكل أفضل، وعلى الأقل بالنسبة لنا كأمم متحدة نرى أن أهداف التنمية المستدامة SDGs هي أفضل خارطة طريق متاحة لنا حتى اليوم في الوصول إلى هذا الحل. أستطيع الجزم في أن كل واحدة من هذه النقاط يستطيع الخبراء إيجاد فرصة للابتكار. التحدي إذن هو طبيعة علاقتنا مع مبدأ الابتكار بعد الكورونا، وهذا في صلب موضوعنا اليوم. فاسمحوا لي أن أشير لبعض النقاط بهذا الخصوص. أولاً، هناك عصف ذهني هائل قائم حالياً في مؤسسات دولية، بيوت خبرة، شركات خاصة وحكومات في معظم الدول للبحث عن حلول مستدامة للتحديات الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والبيئية التي سيواجهها العالم بعد كورونا. وهنا نستطيع أن نؤكد أنه لا يملك أحداً حق أو حتى إمكانية الاحتكار في الابتكار. فهذه الأزمة أضاءت على الكثير من الإبداعات والابتكارات، تعرفنا على البعض منها عن طريق الإنترنت. فالابتكار متاح للجميع، وعلينا الاستفادة من جميع المواهب التي على جميع المستويات، محلياً، وطنياً، إقليمياً، وعالمياً. علينا اصطياد الابتكار خارج أروقة الجامعات والمؤسسات الفكرية، ومن ثم استعمال هذه المؤسسات لتطوير الأفكار والابتكارات الواعدة. فالسؤال: ما هي مؤسسات الجسر ما بين الأستاذ الجامعي أو الباحث الذي يرى في الابتكار التركيز على العلوم والتكنولوجيا من ناحية، وبين المزارع أو العامل في مؤسسة صناعية، أو حتى الباحث عن عمل قد يكون من الحل عدد كبير من الناس؟ ما هو الجسر الذي هو يربط الباحث والمفكر والعالم مع من يكون لديه فرصة للابتكار؟ أي التفكير بالابتكار ليس فقط من منطلق تكنولوجيا المعلومات، لكن منطلقات أخرى. وما هو دور القطاع الخاص والمؤسسات الرسمية؟ ثالثاً، ما هي الآليات والحوافز التي يمكننا وضعها لتحفيز الابتكار، خاصة في موضوع تكنولوجيا المعلومات، ولكن ليس فقط كما ذكرت؟ يخطر على البال برنامج نجوم العلوم، وكيف يمكن توسيع هذا البرنامج أو برامج أخرى للتشجيع على الابتكار والتفكير بشكل بناء وناقد. كيف علينا نحن من نروج لمبادئ الابتكار والتكنولوجيا أن نبتكر في طريقة تفكيرنا واكتساب الدعم الذي نحتاجه لكي يصبح نمط التفكير المبدع والمبتكر والخلاق جزءاً أساسياً من حياة الأجيال القادمة. يعني علينا أن لا نخسر أيضاً جيل أو جيلين أو ثلاثة بانتظار أن يكون التفكير خلاقاً ومبدعاً ومنتجاً. ماذا عن التعليم والتعلم والتفكير النقدي؟ والفرق واضح ما بين التعليم والتعلم، حيث أن فرصة التعلم أصبحت مؤاتية أكثر دون أن يكون بالضرورة هناك وسيط ما بين المتعلم والمادة التعليمية. قد يكون هذا الموضوع الأخير، وسأنهي كلمتي بهذا الموضوع، هذا الموضوع الأخير، أي الابتكار في التفكير عن الابتكار والحديث عنه وإطلاق المواهب الموجودة في مجتمعاتنا، إعطائها حقها والوقف من هدرها وهجرتها إلى حيث تجد من يقدرها ويدرك أهميتها. والكل يعلم كم خسرت المنطقة من مواهب وطاقات لانعدام آليات استيعاب هذه المواهب وهذه الطاقات وتسهيل مهمتها في خدمة الشأن العام. قد يكون هذا الموضوع إذن هو من أولوياتنا التي تستحق انتباهنا وتفكيرنا وطاقاتنا، ليس فقط في هذا اللقاء ولكن في كل منصات ومنابر البحث واللقاء، فالتحدي كبير. أتمنى إذن أن يكون تفكيرنا أن لا يكون مرتبطاً فقط بتكنولوجيا المعلومات، وأن يكون مفهوم الابتكار الانوفيشن أوسع بكثير من فقط تكنولوجيا المعلومات، مع أهمية طبعاً هذا الموضوع. سأكتفي بهذا القدر الآن، وأتمنى لنا جميعاً التوفيق، وأشكركم على حسن إصغائكم. شكراً.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذ منير. Thank you very much Mr. منير ثابت. I will switch speaking to English for the sake of some participants who wanted that. So just 1 minute to summarize for the sake of non-Arabic speakers. Mr. Munir Thabit spoke about the incentive part of innovation. He spoke about that innovation has a wider perspective than ICT and certain particular domain. Innovation is across sectors, across domains, and so on. And he spoke about the brains that holds the innovation, that the Arab talents, the Arab generations, current generation, future generations, we have to think about innovation in a time spectrum rather than a status quo. With this kind of introduction, I thank Mr. Munir Thabit, and I wish he will stay with us, but I know that he has some other commitments. So you are welcome to stay with us as long as you are able to, and you can. We understand if you leave at any moment, Mr. Thabit.
I will stay for as long as I can. I just want to add a little bit to the summary that you have made, Dr. Haidar,
Right.
is that the importance of this moment in history, in the transformation that's happening to our economies, to our thinking, and the importance of innovation to help us go through this process, through this period, and come out stronger, not just on a national level, but also collectively at the global level. So I think this idea of this is a historic moment, it's the flip side of the crisis is the opportunity, and we have an opportunity to actually think differently, and that's what innovation is all about, and come up with collective solutions to some of the challenges we are facing, because we know for sure that solutions that are at one level, even from the most powerful countries, are insufficient to deal with the complexity of the problems we now face, whether it be it climate change or cybersecurity. I heard some of the colleagues were speaking earlier, or the whole idea of trade, globalization. So none of the problems we now face can be solved by any one entity, country, or even area of science. So it's becoming more complex. And there is no, how should I say, there's no shame in saying that no one place or no one country has the solution. So I will stop here and I will stay for as long as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we will quickly move to Dr. Mohab Anis, who is a professor of UC Cairo. Also, he's a CEO of Innovety program. He will present to us a model that I have looked at, and I think it's very promising, and he will speak to us about it. But before I allow him for about 20 minutes, Dr. Mohab, I want to say that we want to solicit questions, but we will entertain them after all the speakers finish their speeches and interventions. Then we will start the questions. So please start, Dr. Mohab, for hopefully you'll finish in 20 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Munir, also for the welcoming words at the beginning. So let me just share my screen so that you can all see my presentation. So as Dr. Haidar was mentioning that I actually wear two hats. I'm a professor at the American University in Cairo in the School of Sciences and Engineering with a cross appointment in the School of Business. And I'm also the CEO of Innovety. Innovety is an innovation management consultancy. We basically help organizations come up with innovative solutions, whether they are around products, services, or new business models that can allow these organizations to grow and to flourish. The other thing is that I also happen to be on the board of directors of the Global Innovation Management Institute think tank for the COVID-19. And this is what I actually want to be talking to you about today. Just a very brief idea about Innovety. We've been working over the past 12 years in the MENA region, helping different organizations, different NGOs, different government officials to, again, to see how they can instill and foster innovation in different ways. We've worked with a lot of corporates and a lot of businesses. On the other hand, the Global Innovation Management Institute, it's one of the largest innovation professional bodies that are in the world. And they basically certify entities and they act as think tanks around as a think tank to how innovation practices can be applied on different industries and across different value chains. So that's just a little bit about the Innovety and Jim. Now, what I'm going to be, I would like to talk to you about today is a work that I have been working with a group of other professionals around the world for the past 4 months, which is to try to have a good understanding of the impact that COVID-19 and the pandemic has had on the economy, and not only at the present state, but actually what kind of new transformations and new normals would be created that are expected to last. And what we did is that we came up with a set of principles that I would like to share with you today, that I think each one of you, whether you are a government official, whether you are someone working in the business world, whether you are working in academia, I think you can start looking at these principles and see how it can be applied to your organization. Okay, so I'm sure that we all have seen these curves very, very well. And one of the main things that governments have been trying to do over the past few months is to try to flatten these curves, which define how many new cases of COVID-19 have been achieved or are existent. And the idea is to flatten the curve is to reduce the kind of constraint that is on the capacity of the healthcare system of a country. And in order to do this flattening of the curve, I'm sure that we are all very familiar with the concept of social distancing, which is that we have to be apart from each other by 2 or 3 meters. And it seems that this strategy has been quite successful. However, this kind of closure of the economy has had a very strong toll on many corporations, many small businesses in particular, governments. Also, there were different types of closure and different types of stresses that they had to take into effect to help some of these small businesses continue to survive and hopefully to grow later on because of the very heavy cash flow problems that they're having. So this kind of closure is a big problem for us. And in order for us to understand why this has been happening, that because of the fear and a lot of the mistrust that is happening because of the pandemic, a lot of the linkages that were existing between an organization and its customers or its beneficiaries have been broken. That customers are reluctant a lot to actually consume some of the products and services that some of the organizations or companies were producing. On the other hand, there was also a fear and mistrust that was taking place between the suppliers and the organizations, or in the case of the development world, between the donors and partners and between organizations. So these kind of broken linkages have been creating a lot of problems that have to do a lot of social and economical problems. So the idea here is that we must go back to resuming our operations properly but this has to happen while decreasing the fear of people consuming products and services and also increasing the trust of people. And if you look at this, if you look at the social and economical impact that this kind of pandemic has created on different governments and different economies, definitely from an economic point of view, there has been a lot of job losses. This immediately would cause business failures and ultimately the collapse of whole industries. And on the social level, unfortunately, there's also the heavy toll, which is that because of the loss of jobs, there's the poverty is going to start going up. Crime probably will also probably go up, and ultimately social unrest. So we need to go back to business. We need to go back to our operations, and we need to do that fast And we need to do that in a safe way, and also keep in mind the kind of changes that have happened into the behaviors of people over the past 3 or 4 months. So what we did at the Global Innovation Management Institute in order to come up with these principles is that we figured out that the best way to come up with changes and innovations that organizations can basically exploit is to look at the customer, or to look at the beneficiary, and to see what kind of challenges that each one of them is having, which is what we call, what kind of impact does this have on the persona. So for example, we've seen a lot of people saying, you know, I don't want to touch any surfaces because this might have been touched by other people and therefore this might transmit virus. We've also seen people saying, you know, I don't want to do this on my own. I want someone to actually help me because, again, I don't want the transmission of viruses to take place. On the other hand, we've heard people saying that I want to go to a certain place to attend a certain event, but I don't actually want to be in that event because of the fear of some of the viruses and the pandemic issues. We've heard people saying, you know, I'm not really sure whether this food is certified clean, whether this car is certified clean when it enters a certain garage, whether the person of delivery is certified clean to make sure that he's delivering in a proper way. We've seen that and we've heard that a lot. We've also seen people saying, I wish that there was some kind of a barrier between me and another person so that I do not have a problem with these kind of viruses being transmitted. We've also seen people saying, you know, crowded places, right? I don't want to be in crowded places, right? We've heard that a lot. We've also heard that people saying, you know, I don't want to be in a place at the same time of other people, right? We've also heard a lot of people talking about, you know, I don't want to use paper money anymore because that is a very strong medium for transmitting viruses. And therefore, I want to kind of reduce any kind of paper transactions and so forth. So what we did at the Global Innovation Management Institute and at Innovety was that we came up with different type of fears and challenges from these different personas. And what we did was we started thinking about, okay, what kind of innovative solutions can really resolve some of these fears and some of these challenges. And we're not talking about solutions that might be culturally insensitive, or they are unpractical, or that they are not economically feasible, because we cannot continue to live in the new normal as with a situation where people are basically sitting, you know, 3 or 4 meters apart. That's just simply not feasible. Or waiting in a line with 3 meters apart because that would make the line too long. Or to keep the middle seat of a bus or a plane because that's simply unpractical and economically it's not feasible. So we must find solutions based on the fears and the challenges of the people that I just explained to you a few minutes ago that are culturally sensitive, that are practical, and also that are economical. And that's why we thought about it. We came up with 11 innovation principles, innovation design principles that would allow any organization to rethink their operations, their processes, their products, and the services. Each one of these innovation principles addresses a certain kind of challenge or fear from the personas that I mentioned to you in a few minutes ago. So by applying these principles, you can decrease fear, you can increase trust, you can make even products more competitive in the market. Or maybe you can allow a researcher at universities to come up with solutions that can actually be addressing the new normal that we would all be living in. So what I want to do in the next few minutes is to go into each one of these principles, explain it to you, and I want you to actually reflect and to think, how can these principles help me as a government, as someone who's working in the government, someone who's working in the business, someone who is working as a researcher or a faculty member at the university? How can this help me come up with something that is of social or economical value? So the first principle is called time segmentation. We're all very accustomed to the word market segmentation, right? Where you segment people based on gender, based on age, based on geographical location. But here what I mean by time segmentation is that I don't want people to come at a certain place at the same time. We've seen this a lot when we're talking about different work shifts, that people don't come at the same time from 9 to 5, we have 2 different shifts. We've seen that even in healthcare, in hospitals, and even in retail stores, where they allocate the first 1 or 2 hours to people who are elderly, who are more susceptible, or who can have a problem with viruses more than other people. We've seen that actually in governments applying these kind of things on traffic, where they would allow the odd number license plate numbers to actually be going in a certain day, and those who are even numbers of as the license plate number to go on another day. That is time segmentation. And we've started to see this actually before you go to a bank or go to a restaurant or even go to a governmental organization, entity, to finish up some of your papers. There's a way where you can actually book your time slot, ahead of time. Again, this is time segmentation. So principle number 1, I would like you to consider the kind of operations that your organization would be working in, and to see how can you do this time segmentation to it, to give people more trust in terms of going and applying and actually consuming some of the services that you're having. So this is principle number 1. Principle number 2 is called decentralized operations, which is the idea of reducing, again, congested places and crowded places. We've seen that a lot with government, where you can have a certain drive-through place to get your papers, instead of actually entering a certain governmental. We've seen that in kiosks. We've seen that in kiosks, where you have government setting up these kiosks in malls so that people can finish their papers and their IDs and everything, instead of going to a governmental organization or a governmental location. We've seen that in healthcare, where you have these COVID-19 testing centers distributed from all around the city. And we've seen that in external clinics also, instead of going to hospitals. We've seen that also in during travel. Instead of going to a certain counter with all passengers, you can actually do your self-check in these different okay? If I can ask, I think there's a bit of noise, so if you can just unmute your mic, I would appreciate that. Okay? So the idea here is that instead of having a certain place where you're allowing people to go to a centralized location, if you can try to think about a way to decentralize your operations to make it more feasible and easier for people to actually access your services or your products. Principle number 3 is called Concierge Economy, which is the idea that people are more accustomed now to do things at home. They are kind of like domestically bounded now. People are more comfortable to do things at their home instead of going to certain places. So we've seen that, that even some of the governmental services, right, such as doing your paperwork, licenses, IDs, people come to your doorstep and actually help you do that. That is Concierge Economy. Social welfare, that you have other people helping you, collect certain things or do certain jobs and help while you are at home. This is Concierge Economy. Even charity organizations, instead of you going to an organization and to make a certain donation, whether it's your used clothes, whether it's your used furniture, whether it's money, instead of you going to them, they come to you. And we've seen that in what we call in Ramadan, al-halaqat al-Rahman, okay, like tables where people come together and they eat during the month of Ramadan. Here, instead of having that situation, you can actually deliver some of the food to the doorsteps of people. So again, this is the idea of re-looking at your products and services and asking yourself, can some of these actually be delivered to the doorstep of some of your customers or your beneficiaries? Okay, and if the answer is yes, then you can apply such a principle. The next principle is called protective barriers, right? Here we've seen this a lot. I'm sure that when you go into retail stores or you go into a pharmacy, you would find some kind of glass that shields between you and the cashier. right? This is protective barriers. We've seen this also in parks where people have to keep certain distances from one another, right? This is protective barriers. We've seen this this has been applied in the transportation sector, whether it is in buses, whether it's in taxis, whether it's in Ubers, right? Where you have these physical barriers to shield between the customers and between the drivers, and also in healthcare. So again, protective barriers is again an opportunity for maybe researchers to look at how they can apply different techniques for helping with these protective barriers, the kind of materials that are being used, as an example. Or if you are a business owner that's working on some of these technologies, how can you use that as a protective barrier for customers to buy? The next principle is called touchless. We're going into a touchless economy right now, right? And again, touchless here means so many things. Whether you're talking about from a security point of view, instead of using your fingerprint for authentication, you can use other things like your eye retina, like face recognition. Even in airports, instead of you going to a certain officer and to show your papers and your passport, now some of them have actually allocated high definition cameras inside the airport so that you can actually scan your papers and you can just enter without going through with the officer. We've seen that even in door controls, right? Again, instead of having these bells and typical lights and typical ways to open doors, there are a lot of touchless solutions. Even when you go into an elevator, right? And instead of pushing the number 10 to go to the 10th floor, right? There is a holographic technology now where you have projections of this button that you want to push, so you can basically push it in air instead of pushing the actual button itself, and therefore increase your likelihood to transmit viruses. This is not science fiction. These are technologies that are existing, and they are becoming cheaper and cheaper over time. And it is the role of the government and the role of researchers to think about how they can deploy some of these technological solutions within the context that they're working in. The next principle that we've seen that is addressing some of the challenges of the personas is called certified clean. Again, right? Certified clean can mean many things. It could be about certified clean certifications that are now starting to be put, at certain institutions or certain organizations, such as the hospitality sector or hotels, that now you are certified clean as a hotel. Now, even government are thinking of having some kind of passport, like some kind of note on a passport that this person who is flying has the antibodies of the COVID-19 and therefore can fly safely. So now you, as a passenger, you're certified clean. And we've seen the disinfectants that are always on the doors before you enter a building. But also, this can be applied in the transportation sector, right? Very, very well. That you can have real-time monitoring of the driver of a certain vehicle to make sure that this driver, his temperature is not up in a certain way, and that can be an indication that this person is ill. Or someone who's delivering a certain product or service to your home, to have some kind of real-time monitoring of the temperature of that person. So again, here confirming that this person is certified clean. Many different ways of thinking about this. This gives confidence to the beneficiary. This gives confidence to the citizen. This gives confidence to the customer to consume and to be able to go get your economy back on track. Very important principle. Next principle that Dr. Aisha was talking about, virtual and digital. I'm sure that we all are, we are having this virtual meeting right now, but this is here to stay. We're talking about, healthcare, a very nice concept that took place here in Egypt, for example, right? That there was a collaboration that took place between the Ministry of Health and Facebook here in Egypt, so that they can identify who are the survivors of the COVID-19, so that they are able to take some of their plasma, which includes the antibodies, and get it transferred to other ones who are sick. That's using virtual and digital. A lot of video meetings that are now being done, online, whether it's for the purpose of getting financial aid support or psychological support or emotional support, everything is happening online. Even conferences, you know, so many applications over the past 2 months have been out, because a lot of the conferences and meetings are not being able to held physically and offline, and a lot of these meetings are online. So again, it's the idea of going virtually and digital. You know, museums are becoming virtual, right? Places, concerts are becoming virtual, a lot of things. Again, a direction that is here to stay, and it's highly important for government officials to consider applying it within their context. The third one, the next principle is maybe a little bit more advanced, which is using robots, right? In healthcare, in helping you with travel when you're in the airport and you want to go to a certain gate and you don't know who to ask. In South Korea, they are using these robots to give you guidance. Whether they are using now, they're also used for drones. Like drones are kind of robots that are used for delivery, and that helps with the logistics sector, and definitely in healthcare when it comes to delivering certain medications. Again, there are certain things that are being experimented with now. So again, it's the idea of starting to using these robots for efficiency, but also to reduce the kind of transmission of viruses that might occur. Next principle is called paperless. And there's so much that has been discussed now about a paperless economy. Paperless here can mean many things. It can mean money, reducing money transactions, physical money transactions. It could be about having electronic prescriptions. Instead of going to a doctor and that the doctor, you know, checks on you and then writes for you a prescription on paper. No, you can create an electronic system that instead of that the doctor can actually use and would actually immediately provide for the pharmacist the kind of medication that was prescribed. Again, not using any paper. Even voting is now being used instead of using papers. And whether we're talking about e-signatures, e-tickets, e-receipts, e-invoices, we have to start thinking about going to a paperless economy. Please pay attention to one thing. These are things that we were going to go to anyway, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, such kind of principles have been accelerated significantly, and that is the opportunity that you need to think about. Whatever you have that is paper, think about how can you create it as being paperless. Another principle is called gamification, right? People love to understand things by applying certain gamification techniques, right? So for example, in China, they use health codes application so that they can say who has a high risk for COVID-19, who has a lower risk. So they use QR codes for that. In retail, because of the local businesses, they're having a lot of problems with the whole pandemic. Governments are now providing like points that you can gain that can be redeemed if you buy from a local business. Even donations, again, you can create it like kind of in a gamified way, and you get points and discounts if you want to do blood transfers. And here, this is something that is really interesting, that in order for you to get the cash flow going for small businesses, you can actually buy right now gift cards, right, for businesses that are temporarily closed that you can later on redeem once they are open, just to get the economy working. So again, these are different tactics that government can actually think about to make things exciting and to make things socially and economically feasible. The last principle I want to talk to you about, which is called collaboration, which is partners in crisis. So many collaborations have taken into account during the pandemic that are here to stay. Governments have partnered with hotels and sports stadiums to convert them into places for isolation. Networking opportunities that can be created between people who can provide health and provide people who need the health. Even the UNDP, they created what they call a COVID-19 Detect and Protect Challenge, where they solicit solutions from different people so that they can solve some of the challenges and so forth. So these are 11 very important principles that I would like you to think about and can open your eyes to what you can do in the products and services. And if I may, in 3 minutes, I want to just explain to you how you can apply some of these principles. The idea is, okay, these are some really, really cool principles. Now, how do I actually apply it? The way to do it is that you think about your organization as part of a supply chain, as part of a value chain. So if you are an organization, you have on one hand customers or beneficiaries, and on the other hand you have suppliers, right, or partners, right? And what you basically need to do, and let me do the example of a restaurant, is that you put down who are the different people and personas that you are trying to serve as an organization. So if you're talking about a restaurant, your own employees would be the chef, the waiter, someone who's cleaning up, right? Your customers will be someone who will be sitting into a restaurant, someone who will be picking up the food, or someone who wants it to get delivered. On the supplier side, you have Salah, who supplies the meat, Fathi, who does the maintenance, and Sana, who does the laundry. And what you do is that you focus on one of the parts of the value chain, let's say the customers, and you look at the three personas that you can possibly have, and you pick one persona, which is eat in Maya. Maya is going to eat inside the restaurant. And what you do is that you envision the journey of Maya, right? From the point that Maya enters the restaurant to the point that Maya gets out of the restaurant. So she enters, she gets seated, she orders, food is prepared, Maya is served, Maya eats, Maya pays, and then Maya leaves. And for each one of them, each stage of the journey, you do what we call a COVID-19 risk factor, either high, medium, or low, okay? Which one has the highest contact? And for those who are considered to be a high or medium risk factor, you start applying the 11 innovation principles that I talked to you earlier, right? And you ask yourself, how can this stage look any differently as a product, as a service, as a way of delivery, so that by applying the principles before. So how you can do protected principles for when Maya is seated. You can apply the paperless principle to do the ordering. You can do a certified principle for the food preparation. You can do it yourself when you want to do the serving. You can do some kind of disposable concept. You can do a touchless concept and so forth. So here, this gives you the different variety of innovations that you can do as a restaurant. Apply this to the public sector. It's exactly the same principle. So let's give one quick example in a couple of minutes. The healthcare industry. All you need to do to apply the principles is to look at the industry and to break it down across its value chain. So in the healthcare industry, you have payers, people who pay, intermediaries like insurance companies, people who are healthcare providers like hospitals, labs, clinics, and producers of healthcare, such as pharmaceutical and medical devices. What you do is that you take one example from the different value chain representatives, right? And you start looking at what each one of them actually does, right? And what is the kind of mandate for each one of them. And what you do is exactly the same thing that you've done with the restaurant. You start looking at one of the beneficiaries and you try to envision the journey that this beneficiary does, you know, from the point of having symptoms all until the point where this person gets treated. So he goes through the hospital, they're meeting the doctor, doing the pharmacy, purchasing the medication. And from there, again, you define the points of high COVID risk and you apply the 11 innovation principles to come up with a lot of different solutions, right? Transportation industry, same thing, okay? So let me just conclude. So you can apply this for the public sector. You can apply this for the health, the educational sector. So you come up with many different solutions for this. So as a conclusion to what I was saying, that if you are a small business, big company, industry association, government entity, think about these innovation principles, do these kind of journey mappings and see where the high risk factor is, and you come up with a really nice way to come up with many solutions that a lot of them are here actually to stay, not just because of the pandemic, but are here to stay, and I hope that was useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohab. This is very insightful and very framing. It's you are putting all the pieces in one frame, itemized in what you call the principles. And I think you spared the policymakers in this area of really having to spend a lot of time trying to finding the jigsaw pieces and putting it together. Now the jigsaw pieces are there, so it's it's up to me from my vantage point how to apply this frame in my particular application and in my particular work area. So thank you very much. So now it's my turn as Haider Frehat to speak. I will make my presentation short. It's scheduled for 10 minutes. I probably will make it shorter than that. Well, I want to start where Dr. Mohab just finished, where the point is, the first point I want to say is that governments, we cannot ignore, because in the Western countries, the size of government of the economy would reach between 5% and 15%. In our part of the world, the government size of the economy would reach up to 40% of the economy in what we call the rentier kind of economies and so on and so forth. So when we talk about innovation and the principles of innovation, then someone has to sit and think how to frame all of that for a government application, because the government application in our part of the world is not something small. It is a sizable, chunkable kind of endeavor. So this is the first point. The second point, already we are seeing private sector innovations that are that goes in almost every facet of the economy and the society as well. For example, we started to hear concepts like fintech, edtech, health tech, and many other techs. One of the techs is called GovTech. The GovTech is a little bit, it is the, I consider in our research at ESCWA, is the next stage after e-government, because e-government, classically speaking, speaks about software. It is like a server with certain programs and algorithms and applications where they give screens to citizens and they interact with citizens through screens, and other businesses as well, and other government as well. But for the GovTech, it is the utilization of government to other things like robots, drones, cameras, driverless cars, you name it. So there are so many applications that has physical hardware and algorithm stuff and artificial intelligence stuff, where we are going now beyond the classical e-government. What does this mean here? It means that we are in more need for more innovation, and more innovation, creativity in innovation. And of course, the challenge is huge, because most of our governments and our states in the Arab world are 50 years old, 70 years old, 100 years old. So we have great old bureaucracies that such technologies or such innovations would be a great catalyst in ridding our region of its chronic situations. The third point I want to mention is about the future. I'm sure Mr. Khalid Fattal will elaborate more, but now, and we all know this, the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything. The Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, also it needs a lot of creativity and innovation, not only in the producing of the things and the boards of the thing and the buttons of the things, but also the interactions between the things with the humans. And there's a lot of creativity and innovation in how we reflect our classical societal behaviors that we inherited from our parents and grandparents to so many generations before, and reflect that into the new name of the game, the new game of Internet of Things. We as humans are going to be part of the things. We are one thing on the node. So there is a need for a lot more innovation and creativity, and we need to handle that in a different way. And Mohab's the model, if I may call it, I think it gives a very good frame for such an endeavor. The next point is about what countries are doing now. Now we are seeing many countries of the world, including the Arab world, they are talking about digital economy. And some of them are raising this as a slogan. Some of them are actually having concrete steps in materializing the digital economy in the Arab world. Whether this case or that case, I think digital economy is important. It is coming, and it needs itself a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, a lot of innovity in making such digital economy work. I mean, and the digital economy, by the way, is not something that we welcome and introduce from the outside and we give it a stamp on the passport at the airport. It's coming anyway. It's coming, it's flying, it's coming like, you know, it's raining like dogs and cats on us. And unless we are prepared, unless we are innovative in receiving such technologies and embedding it into our ordinary economies, then we will fail tremendously and we will have a lot of problems. And by the way, solving the problem at the beginning of the problem is much more cheaper and easier than solving the problem when it is aggravated and when it is expanded. Now, the last 2 points I have is about data. And I'm glad that I can see Mr. Yuri with us here today. Data and innovation in data. Look, I was the Director General of the Jordan Department of Statistics. This is the good old Yuri. We can see him. I was the Director General of Jordan Department of Statistics. I used to spend $15 million a year on generating data, classical governmental data. However, we have a huge problem in utilizing the data. Okay, sometimes $1 million CD with a couple of tables will land on a minister's table, and that's it. That's the end of the world. That's the end of the story. Okay, 6 months later, the minister is not there and it is vanished. So we have a $1 million vanished of data, vanished. But now with the new paradigm of data, big data, open data, clouded data, I think we can be very innovative and creative in not only generating the data, but also the utilization. And the technology allows a lot of tools for utilization of data, but it's much more than the classical utilization methods. We are having now data cubes, we have visualizations, we have visualization that are smart and reflects the exact need of the data utilizer. So there are many, what the point is that there's a lot of room for creativity in data, not only production, but also analysis and utilization. The data production is not bad, it's good. The data analysis, it's not bad, it's good, basically in universities and so on and so forth. But the data utilization for decision making, for policy making, it's problematic. It is, for me, it's a total problem. The last point, which I will allude to, and Khalid, of course, will pick on it, which is the cyber. Mohab has shown us 11 principles, which I prefer to call them domains, but he likes principles. It's okay. Now, for each item, the general items and the sub-items in there, I think there's a whole world of cyber issues, cyber security issues, cyber legal issues, cyber rights issues, cyber life and death issues. So you name it, a lot of things in there. I got emotional on this because this is, I know how impactful it is. So I think the best person to talk about this is Mr. Khalid Fattal, who is the chairperson of the MLI group, which is the Multilingual Internet group. A group, it has many facets that I will spend perhaps more than half an hour speaking about the facets of his group and work. But he is the inventor of a new term which came after cybersecurity, which is survivability, the term of survivability. And he also the inventor of the term era of the unprecedented. These are he has his own vision about how to handle cybersecurity in the future, and he is thinking outside the box. So I think Khalid, if you can in 10-15 minutes, please, not more than that, to give us your visions on how we can handle these innovations and technological innovations from a cybersecurity perspective and any other perspective you wish to speak about, of course. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Haider. I'm not sure if you can see me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to come and speak here. And I actually enjoyed the previous presentations a moment ago. What I think is necessary to put things in perspective is the following. First, I want to talk about what does COVID-19 bring to the table? Why is it an unprecedented challenge? I also would like, and by the way, Dr. Haidar, if I miss on any of these points, feel free to remind me. And I will try to do it in under 10 minutes to try and break with the Arabic traditions of taking too long. So with that in mind, let's get a reality check first. And by the way, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Farhat. What I wanted to add is the Era of the Unprecedented was an investigative program we launched in 2017. And that's because we were looking at unprecedented events and geopolitical events and cybersecurity events that are actually compromising nation states and organizations, and whereby cybersecurity strategies and solutions were actually failing to defend them. The survivability isn't just a label. It's in fact a strategy with solutions into it that applies to governments and organizations. But going back to the topic of how innovation can be could be utilized to address the post-COVID-19 world, let's put it in perspective. COVID-19 in Arabic, I call it al-mu'arri al-akbar, which means the greatest disrober. It's the revealer. Ladies and gentlemen, it puts it in perspective. It speeded up and unmasked the challenges that different local societies are facing today, which are greater than what the West is facing, and they are unprecedented, and it's on many levels. So Dr. Muhab mentioned earlier on some of his models and the way that can be considered in moving forward. I think he presented some really good ideas. The challenge in the Middle East, Dr. Farhat addressed this, is when you look at the level of government involvement and contribution to the local economy in the West, as Dr. Farhat mentioned, is 10 to 15%. In the Arab world, we're talking 30, 40%, in some instances more than 50%. How do you come and compensate for this? When you consider the fact that in the UK, since lockdown, in trying to get people, the furlough scheme and the paying for citizens to be able to feed themselves, the UK government has spent close to £200 billion, which is almost, well, more than 10% of their GDP. The US has spent in excess of $1.5 trillion, could be even more if you really do the numbers. How do you actually pay for this? So the challenge in the Middle East is not the economics, in my opinion, to start with, nor is the challenge coming up with innovative ideas. The biggest challenge I see is exactly what Dr. Farhat addressed. When a government says, we want to do something to have our government and our citizens ready in our country, and I'm talking about the Middle East, post-COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen, which ministry will that fall under? So they may take another 12 months to figure out which ministry. The problem here is there is an urgent need to act yesterday. The sense of urgency could not be greater in the Middle East than elsewhere. And that means innovation and perhaps the use of technology need to come to fruition sooner than later before the street starts boiling. And when you look at it this way, many sectors in the West have actually been devastated. You think about the hospitality sector. In the Western Hemisphere, I don't think 40% of the jobs will be there maybe 12 months from now. The challenge today that organizations are facing is that they do not have the means to survive for 12 months, 24 months before the pandemic is dealt with, before the vaccine is attainable, which means many of those will end up having to lay off their staff. What does that mean? It means in the Middle East, where we have a much higher level of unemployment than the rest of the world, the social impact will be potentially catastrophic. By the way, I'm hearing some feedback from some of the mics. So if you have your mic on, please mute it. Thank you very much. So that actually it needs to be put into perspective. So moving forward, Dr. Farhad mentioned how reference that I'm the one who has to give you all of the answers regarding cyber. As we were talking prior to the start of this webinar between us as speakers, this topic came up again. And my reply in very simple terms was, cyber is the manifestation of all ills of society. So in fact, if today you get breached and your hacker sends you a ransom note, go and celebrate. You know what they want. They are financially motivated. In the last 6, 7, 8 years, the escalation of what we label as geopolicyber motivated cyber attacks. These are political, ideological, religious, and extremist, etc. They're not financially motivated. When these attacks with these motivations breach you, whether you're an organization or a government, guess what? The devastation could be catastrophic on not only the government installation, but also the citizens' lives and livelihoods. So fundamentally, the new era post-COVID-19 requires an unprecedented top-level way of thinking. You can no longer just think in the traditional methodology that we've inherited from the 21st century. This is why talking about survivability, and it's not a marketing term, we try to illustrate the need for governments and organizations to consider how post-COVID-19 their effective and competitive survivability will be in the way they serve their citizens. And unless you do that, again, it's going to be a lost cause, and the problem will be manifesting itself on a much greater scale. And by the way, we get this a lot when the question is, why does government have to worry about survivability? We're governments, we're here. We're not going to go anywhere. I always reply to these senior government officials by asking them, you compete with other governments in many sectors. Hospitality, you want people to come and come to your country because you want them you want to be a place for them to go and spend money on holidays. You compete for investment. Why would they come to you if you don't have a modality that is showcased where your being in your place is more competitive than in another country? So governments as well have to realize that they also exist in a competitive environment, and that innovation approach in the way you start thinking, not just in the way how you implement technology, is critical. And unfortunately, and I will close with this, and if I've missed on something within this, my time that's allotted, Dr. Farhad, please feel free to point it out to me. It is imperative for the leadership within the Arab world to recognize that the current strategies they follow, whether it's cybersecurity strategies, whether it's technology strategies or innovation strategies, are cut and paste imported from the West. And ladies and gentlemen, they are bringing in strategies that are already failing. One case in point, if you consider that the White House communication, the most secure part of the brain of the American empire, was breached. What are your chances of following those strategies and those approaches? So it really is a reality check to come to terms with post-COVID-19 is an opportunity where this unmasker, the great unmasker, revealer, has created a possibility for those who really wish to think and implement outside of the box strategies. Then they can start implementing how they can serve their citizens and the lives and livelihoods of their citizens better. So I hope it becomes an opportunity. I'm not wholly optimistic that all will do that. We have 7 billion people in the world, and the unfortunate case here is COVID-19 will have a lot of collateral damage, and it's the opportunity of those who become the difference makers versus the casualties of war. With that, I conclude, and if I miss something, Dr. Farhat, please point it to me. I'm happy to address it in the shortly.
Thank you very much, Khalid. That was insightful. I mean, you just alerted us to the reality check, and this thing about copy-pasting or importing ready-made strategies and policies might not be smart at all to our region. So we have to think.
We don't have a choice.
Yes.
Dr. Farhat, this is the point. We don't have a choice. The chances are many Arab governments or Middle East governments will actually try to copy some of what's been done in the UK or in France and others. And guess what? Just put it in perspective. The bankrupt nation of the EU, Greece, bankrupt country of the EU, Greece, performed better than all of these Western societies. They have under 200 dead from COVID. And it happened because they actually became prepared back in January. So the agility in taking action, an appropriate action based on a strategic way of wanting to do things in the 21st century is critical. There's no escaping that. Otherwise, it's just going through the motions, unfortunately.
Yeah, and from my humble experience, I noticed that some of the aid coming to our countries in the area of science, technology, and innovation is tied to certain frames, certain programs, and certain approaches to handle technology, which is really problematic. But this is a huge endeavor by itself.
Dr. Farhat will make this
that warrants another webinar by itself.
No, but you're talking about, for example, freedom of expression and democracy that becomes conditional to a lot of things we do in the Middle East because it's coming from the West. I think it's time to bury that and or put it, as we say in Arabic, put it in water and drink the water.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned is about this COVID thing. Is it an opportunity or a threat? So this question for me, I want to keep it on the table. Is it for innovation a threat or an opportunity? I think if we are able at the end of this webinar to decide that that COVID-19 shall be considered as an opportunity to move forward with innovation, or it's a threat for innovation that something wrong will happen to innovation after COVID. I think this is one of the questions that need to be answered. So because our time is short, I will move quickly to the next speaker, Dr. Yusuf Al-Abdallat from Jordan. He is a faculty member at Jordan University, and he is also an STI specialist, a regional STI specialist. He has a lot of fingerprints in many of the strategies and policies at the League of Arab States level and the Arab world level. Also, he's now running a program which is very interesting, which is the Faculty for Factory program at Jordan University, and he has moved that program into a new endeavor that he will tell us about. So I hope, Dr. Yusuf, in 10 minutes you can tell us about that, and you can link it to this concept, this very objective of this webinar, which is innovation, how we handle innovation after COVID. Please.
Dr. Haidar, thank you so much. Really, I'm so happy and glad, first of all, to see you and other friends, and to hear such amazing, beautiful people talk so deeply. And it's again information for me, really. Thank you so much. You make me even thinking more deep and fruitful, and give me even myself opportunity. In the future, it will be on our side. Thank you so much, everybody. I will talk a little about our program. The program, it's a national program called the National Program for Linkage Academic Institute with industrial sectors, or between two faculty for a factory, FFF program. This program, it was like a dream, started in 2003 from Jordan University, just from the School of Engineering. And now recently it's become a national program, consists of all universities in Jordan, private and government universities, and all specialty. We start just from engineering, especially industrial engineering department, and now consist all specialty, all field, all sectors in Jordan. Output of this program, really, it was amazing. We work on just to open it, like, linkage, or to narrow the gap between academic and industry. But now recently we work with all aspect of the specialty or sectors, with not just in the industry. And we believe in like comprehensive mean of industry. Anything it's effect on the with value things, it will be in industry. Either even we consider universities in industry, tourism is industry, everything. This is a comprehensive meaning of industry with output, valuable output. I would like to talk more about the success stories or something in this, but I will focus in the from this is program. We found many things effective because it's potential in the universities and academic people, those specialists, or they have become like a campus for any government, either local government, even for human being in general, because it's the pool and it's the spring, okay, with a lot of things for innovation. And they can help also to change many aspects and many trend, either for development, correct the path for the government and for the region and human being as well. Not just that this is in Jordan, this is available in everywhere. And when we talk R&D and innovation, the main things that will be in the universities, and then we can make a real partnership and sharing between three triangle, the government, or government to the private sectors, and with national society or academic. Based on that, we found ourselves it's something new. It's not like a fashion or a model, with innovation and entrepreneurship. We start work on that from industry need or from private sectors, and it's helped us a lot, really, these things in COVID-19 from March. We found many potential, help the government. Before that, we start to talk about innovation and as a culture. And this is things not just, like a before or after COVID-19. It to build in our students from preschool up to fully professors. This is what we needed to talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, and this is packaged as whole. And it focus in the other things also on the career path of either ourselves to work on ourselves as professors, leaders, government, policymakers, teachers in the schools. This is what we needed to in innovation, to focus on that. Later on the strategical level, we can get the fruitful of this is issue. In innovation, we start to talk about it in the university, and from ourselves we prepare, and as a class, 3 credit hours of the class start from like special topic. And in the university, it's not easy to bring in new classes. It's like, sometimes like it's impossible even. We prepare this course, and there's we have special topic. You can the professor bring this is classes within, and now this is course now it's like it's with the university, not just in engineering. It's free for all the students of engineering, and we built this is innovation and entrepreneurial class based on 3 pillars. Okay, not just knowledge, and you mentioned, but based innovation. It's a need as a culture. And we need the basic knowledge of this, as Dr. Mohab mentioned about his principle. And really, thank you so much. Interesting things. I like it. But also, just in knowledge, we built it in other pillars, 3 pillars with the skills, what the market need. Okay, many skills for our student and ourselves as well. We need it. Maybe it's it's. And these skills, it also take us to build like a leadership model for our generation. The third one, and this is the most important, and we involve in the class, but indirect way, to be like what they mentioned, like mindset, change behavior, critical thinking. The main 2 pillars, first 2 pillars, we make it direct, okay? Either in the research, market research, knowledge, information, other one, skills, to let him to help to make it as a presentation skills, pitching, time management, other thing. But the third one, it's not easy at all. We make it indirect way, and we found the output. It was amazing. Like diet or makeup before and after. Those students, they attend this class. Okay, it was many change behavior. Start to think about themselves, about their future, supporting, about voluntary work. We get a lot of success story, and also they help our students to work as a team. And this is we need in our society, not individuality, but we as a working as a team. And later on to start from individual pitching, ideation, teaming, another thing. The last step of this is course, he has to find a new idea, new business or startup. It's up to them with a team. Okay, so the module is easy, and I'm able to share it with anybody to like it, and not just as entrepreneur, okay, or entrepreneurship, because it's available in Arab world or in Jordan. But the first time we teach innovation and entrepreneurship course. Okay, with the prototyping and the whole module things of it. We talk about innovation. I believe in a region, we are not high tech, okay? But now the trend in the world with the Industrial Revolution or Industrial 4.0, it's the track going so fast, and revolution, it's not easy. So we have to take care ourselves and on the national level to prepare for this is revolution or change either after COVID, and it will be so fast after COVID-19, because we found it something during COVID-19 or after it will be over COVID-19, what it call as a new trend, a new normal. And this is a trend start in 2008 after recession, and now it's become again to our terminology, a new normal. We have to go smart way to go for certain thing. Okay, we are not high tech, but if we believe in ourselves and our people, we are good in HR resources, in human resources, either management, people. I don't like to talk about system, but I talk about the positive thing. So we have to go for design approach, and this is issue. Okay, I guess all of you with us, and we didn't have like a high tech, but we have smart people in different specialty, either engineering, IT, design, agriculture, many agriculture or architecture.
This is the time is running up almost.
Okay, so sorry, just okay. So we believe in now to go in design approach, okay, because what is going new in the world is not will be more made in, it will be designed by. Okay, in Internet of Things, or those people they believe by industrial revolution, now they talk about some things about maybe I will mention again about like in design approach about interoperability, virtualization, decentralization, real-time capability, surface orientation, modularity, and something also we have to take care about it in coding or programming industry to be real for singularity. This is something important to prepare ourselves in innovation based on design and to invest in our brain, especially most important things to focus on the education field, and this is issue. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I take more than my time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yusuf, very much. And now we close this presentational session, and now we open for Q&A. But before that, if I may, I have Dr. Bahauddin Hamid Rashid from Iraq, who would like to say a statement. It's not scheduled, but he requested to say his statement about the status of innovation in Iraq, which is very interesting to us and very inspiring, because even for countries who are started to rebuild again, they are considering innovation as one way of rebuilding. It's part of the rebuilding apparatus. So, Dr. Baha, I hope you are ready to make your statement. Allowed to talk, okay. I have pushed allow to talk. Dr. Baha, can you hear?
تسمعني؟
نعم.
دكتور، السلام عليكم دكتور. آسف.
مرحبا، أهلا وسهلا.
آسف أنا أتكلم بالعربية إذا أمكن دكتور.
Yeah, he requested to speak in Arabic. Please go ahead.
أوكي، شكرا دكتور. أنا بهاءالدين حميد أمثل منظمة مجتمع مدني وليس أمثل الحكومة العراقية. نحن إحدى منظمات المجتمع المدني اللي هي مركز الابتكار والإبداع العراقي. حقيقة احنا أقرب أن نكون إلى المخترعين والمبدعين والمبتكرين في بلدي. حقيقة يعني احنا الأزمات أكيد تخلق الإبداع وتشجع على الإبداع. خلال أزمة كورونا كثير من الإبداعات أظهره المبدعين العراقيين كتصنيع أجهزة التنفس الصناعي والكفوف وإلى آخره من هذه الإبداعات. احنا مرات واحدة من الإبداعات اللي كثرت بالسوشيال ميديا هي ابتكار العلاجات، الأدوية العلاجية، وهذه مشكلة نواجهها في العراق، أنه كثير من الأطباء والمبدعين يخترعون ويبدعون أدوية علاجية لمعالجة كورونا، يواجهون وزارة الصحة اللي هي لا توافق على هذه الإبداعات لأن عندها آليات خاصة لقبول العلاج، وهاي المشكلة نواجهها. أنا ما راح أطيل بهذا الموضوع، راح أدخل للتحديات اللي تواجه المبدعين والمخترعين العراقيين اللي هي مشابهة إلى حد ما لما موجود في البلدان في بلادنا العربية. واحدة من الأشياء اللي تواجهنا أنه ضعف ثقافة تسجيل الإبداع، يعني يقصد الحماية الفكرية. يعني معظم المبدعين ما يحاولون يسجلون إبداعاتهم. تلاحظ أنه مثلا في بقية الدول، الصين، الولايات المتحدة، شوف مئات الألوف من براءات الاختراع تسجل. إحنا هذا في بلادنا أكو ضعف في تسجيل براءات الاختراع، رغم أنه المكتب العراقي لتسجيل براءات الاختراع من تاريخ 17/3/2030 استلم 238 طلب براءة اختراع. الحقيقة عدد البراءات الاختراع اللي قدموها عددها جدا قليل ما تخص الابداعات تخص ازمه كورونا. هذه واحده من الاشياء اللي انا اكد عليها انه ضعف تسجيل براءات الاختراع. حقيقة احنا في بلدي ظهرت لنا الأزمة ضعف في مجال التقنيات الرقمية وخصوصا التعليم. هذا فد مشكلة كبيرة ظهرت لنا بالعراق. البنى التحتية الرقمية بالعراق جدا ضعيفة. واحدة من الأزمات الأخرى اللي هي يعني ظهرت لنا أنه ضعف التكنولوجيا بالعراق. التكنولوجيا جدا مهمة اللي خاصة لبناء أو لتطوير الإبداعات. عندنا مشكلة قديمة جديدة اللي هي تخص، يعني هذه خاصة بنا، أنه لا توجد عندنا استراتيجية وطنية لدعم وتشجيع الابتكار. هذه ضرورية جدا. هذه يعني حتى منظمة الإسكوا شاركوا في مناسبات عديدة لدعم العراق أن يشجعون أن يبنون هذه التكنولوجيا. نحن كمنظمات مجتمعنا المدني نحاول ونضغط على الحكومة لإيجاد أو لوضع قانون لرعاية ودعم المبدعين والمخترعين. هذه مشكلة أيضا نواجهها. أكو مشكلة أخرى هي ضعف الإعلام المتخصص والمعني بنشر الابتكار. يعني الإعلام الابتكاري عندنا ضعيف جدا. الإعلام يهتم أكثر شيء بالسياسة والفنانين وإلى آخره، فضعف أكو اهتمام بالابتكار. أكو مشكلة أخرى نعالجها وتحدثت عنها دكتور حيدر حضرتك عن الواقع بالأردن، ضعف الإحصائيات. نحن لا توجد في العراق إحصائيات، خاصة مؤشر ابتكار. ما عندنا إحصائية مؤشر ابتكار. هذه أيضا مشكلة عندنا. هذه ملخص التحديات حتى عن عجل، يعني على عجل عديتها. وأشكر سماحك لي المداخلة دكتور حيدر، مع شكري واحترامي للسادة المشاركين في هذه الندوة. شكرا جزيلا دكتور.
شكرا جزيلا. At this point, and in continuation to what Mr. Bahadin just mentioned about the status in Iraq and the challenges they are facing, such as lack of laws and legislation to support innovations and inventions, and also the lack of exposure and press dissemination of achievements in innovation and so on and so forth. The point I want to make here is that he mentioned also ESCWA's role and so on. ESCWA, as one of the United Nations organizations, is mandated to help the Arab countries, 22 Arab countries, with many areas, including the area of ICT, the area of technology, science, and innovation. When we talk about innovation, of course, we don't reach to the Iraqi citizen or the Egyptian citizen and so on, but we reach to the government policymakers and the policymakers in the ecosystem in the country, not only for government. For example, we have established in 11 Arab countries, we have established the NTTO, which is the National Technology Transfer Offices and Centers, which are basically responsible for knitting together the various ecosystem pieces in each of the countries in the area of science, technology, and innovation. So I think we are ready, Dr. Baha, to help Iraq in any way possible in shaping up the innovation landscape, including helping in designing or drafting laws in the area of patenting, the area of supporting innovators, young innovators, and so on. And that applies to all of the Arab countries. We have certain success stories in Arab countries and other not very successful interventions in some Arab countries. Part of it because of some of the Arab countries are distracted with what so-called Arab Spring, and now distracted with COVID-19. So we easily, the innovation file easily can go to the back burner and slip out of the attention of policymakers. I can see the hand of Khalid raised. Yes, Khalid, in 1 minute, not more than 1 minute, please.
No, I'll make it in 20 seconds as well. I think what the last speaker, speaking from Iraq, and it's unfortunate for some of the attendees who could not understand, he was really expressing the challenges that Iraqi society is facing in the lack of government, formal institutional operations in place. And that's a major challenge. In fact, in majority, if not all, of the Arab governments and Arab societies or Middle East societies, there is a lack of the correct or the necessary legislative framework. We talk about, within the MLI group, when we talk about survivability, when it comes to government, we talk about a national cyber survivability strategy with a legislative roadmap. The key point here is why this is relevant is that moving forward, COVID-19 or not, but this is COVID-19 accelerated, moving forward, the legislative modality of governments, even in the West, are inherited from the 19th and 20th century and are ill-equipped to actually deal with the speed at which technology is evolving and the challenges to citizens when it comes to privacy issues and other issues. So a legislative roadmap and implementation is necessary, and virtually all these governments have no clue how to do this so far.
Thank you very much. If you allow me to say it differently, we are now running the 21st century institutions with 20th century mentality and 20th century tools.
In fact, you're absolutely right. In fact, to really cement the point, I actually tried to use the expression we are using dinosaur tools, not that, because it really needs to be part of the new modality. The unprecedented thinking and the mindset requirement, as I was talking earlier on, is required at the highest level. So if a nation state is fortunate to have a truly caring leader, then that leader will be in a position to actually help this. If you don't, guess what? The streets will be boiling, because the challenges on the streets in the Arab world, from what we hear, is far greater than what we see in the West. Over to you.
Thank you, Khalid. Thank you very much. Now we open for the Q&A. If anyone would like to pose a question, either by typing it or by raising the hand, and he or she will be allowed to bring his or her question. In the meantime, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a button called polls. It has only one question. So if I may ask you kindly to answer that question, I will launch the poll. Allow all to vote. Launch the poll. Okay, now I think you can see it.
Dr. Ferhat, you know what? I'm encouraged to say yes, but only if there will be uptake for a change of mindset. Could we tell whether we are being successful or we've just wasted our time?
Okay.
But yes.
All right. So, okay. So the poll is done now. We have 11 votes with 100% saying yes, this webinar was useful. I don't know. Do you want me to? Let me relaunch it for those who were not able to do it. Okay. Let me relaunch. Now there's a relaunch. Yeah, Dr. Yusuf.
Did you vote? Yeah, yes, sure.
So, how do we vote again the Arabic way? What do we do?
No, just once. No, just once. Okay. So with this, let me open the questions. I will share results with you. You can see the results right now. Stop. Okay.
Arabic election.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to comment on that. But now let's see the questions. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Because now we have consumed 1 hour and 40 minutes. Yes, Aisha, please, Dr. Aisha.
How can I do it? Okay, now it's okay.
It's done,
Can hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much to all of the 4 or 5 speakers. It was really very interesting to listen and to see even the idea from outside and all the remarks that given by Dr. Fattal from UK about what we are doing in our organization, in our work, in our vision. My question is, first of all, I really like a lot, and I will take, as you know, Dr. Muhab, I'm in touch with him for this very specific work about the relevant models that he exposed to us. I find it's very good study done very quickly, and he covered different aspects. My question now is how to link these models and how to take this as these models in our program, in our current and future program, taking in consideration the different SDGs, the objectives. And the second question is for Dr. Youssef about the design approach that he mentioned in his talk. Which kind of approach that we can apply in our current situation, in our crisis, taking into consideration that the university or the research center can be really delighted to serve the community by finding a different solution for our problem at this moment. And the third one, I just want to give also some comment about, I think this is very, the lesson that we can learn from this crisis is, from my point of view, is to take really carefully the relation between the man and his biosphere. How to protect this, this ecosystem, and how we can use it to protect ourselves and to live in a sustainability way. Because as you say, the virus is something I cannot see what is the reason, what is the origin of the virus, but this is just, from my point of view, a lesson how to deal with, taking consideration that we are sharing in symbiose the different organisms that we are living with them.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. Yes, Dr. Mohab.
Sure. Let me respond perhaps to the first part, which has to do with how can we take some of these principles to in action, especially those are related to the different SDGs. I actually worked with some development organizations on this, and the way that we go about is that every development organization has a different mandate. So some organizations, they focus on healthcare related issues, education issues, things that have to do with clean water, energy, so forth. And every development organization, the kind of programs that they try to implement also focus on different beneficiaries. So some of them, they focus on children, entrepreneurs, youth, and so women, girls, and so forth. So what we do is that we basically have a look at the existing programs that are being implemented in these organizations, and we really follow more or less the same methodology, which is we try to map the kind of journey that these beneficiaries usually normally go through, right? In order to get access to the kind of services that are being provided. And we basically try to analyze different parts of this journey, and we identify again the places that have high risk again for the COVID-19, and by applying these principles, you can actually come up with a lot of different solutions that can be included in existing programs, but also programs that they can actually apply for with different donors. Just one thing to keep in mind is that this methodology allows you to come up with many different solutions. Some of them are incremental innovation, like small things that you can do very, very quickly. Other ones that are maybe a little bit less incremental. What we do after that is that we prioritize these opportunities and these different innovations according to do you have the resources to actually implement them? Do you have the money? How impactful are these resources are? So my answer to you directly, Dr. Aisha, is that these principles can again be applied more or less in the same way to any kind of development organization, and we've done it with 3 so far, and I hope this can be useful to many other organizations too.
Are you waiting for me to answer now? Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Dr. Yusuf, sorry, I'm mute. Dr. Yusuf, it's your turn, please.
Okay.
Oh.
My turn or Dr. Khalid?
No, yourself.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Aisha, for this is a nice question. Actually, this is what myself I believe, and I guess if we would be in to have some chance or rule now in the world to be in these things, it's easy and not easy, but we can have play some role in design wise. We are not high tech country, but as I mentioned before, we have good human being educated and capability of thinking. In design approach, this will be, I guess, so important. Next era, as I mentioned before, we will start to talk about designed by it, and this is itself, it's innovation. It will not compete with like in China or other country because it's made in. But if we will focus on design by it, even this is aspect, it will be innovation. And when I mention design, it's not as I mentioned, Mr. Thabit, Munir Thabit, he mentioned not just focus on IT sectors. Okay, but even in any aspect, it will be valid in either from fashion, from furniture, from design. This is, automation, IT, even in literature and in humanities studies as well. It's designed to think about it. Yeah. These are things it will be, we have to focus to build our in critical thinking and change behavior. In the world now, it's they say talk about even in industry with the artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and the big data and simulation. They start mentioned, as I mentioned before, those things start with Audi and other things, and those things designed from the interoperability, virtualization, the decentralization up to modularity, from small things to make it as a whole structure. Yeah. And nowadays, with when we talk about the singularity, also this is something so important to relation between time and knowledge. To start, this is from a beginning with our student. We talk about Industrial 4, but now in Japan, they start with a new approach. They call Society 5.0. Okay, maybe some people now, this is something new to hear about it. The Japanese approach, they didn't talk about Industrial 4.0. They start to talk about Society 5.0 because, you know, they are almost like us, they are Oriental. That starts from the first revolution as, steam engine, then electricity, then in 1960s, start with ITC. And recently in 2011 up to 2016, with from Davos, Klaus, they talk about Industrial 4.0 and then Industrial Revolution. Japanese, they talk about start from Society 1.0 from hunting, then Society 2.5 with agriculture. Then after major period, those empire, they talk about Industrial Society 3.0 society, and recently with ICT, number 4. But recently they talk about some Society 5.0 to bring the virtual space with real space. Okay? Bring them together, either artificial intelligence, big data, simulation, and all of those things. Okay, but they bring where's the human being in? Yeah, it's a nice approach, really. It's like to bring both society, the space of and focus at the human being. Something recently they start to talk it. And
you motivated us to go and to read more about it, Dr. Yusuf.
Society 5.0, something new, and we start to even contact them, and this is issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Khalid.
Okay, Dr. Aisha, can I ask you a favor? Could you please ask the question again? Briefly, if you can, if you don't mind, please. Unmute, please. Unmute your mic.
The mic.
Unmute your mic, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
My question, as you are on ICT and cybersecurity, and it's related, very linked, correlated to digital technologies that we are used in this crisis. My question is, how you, as an observer, how you can give us some, what I can say, some concept, how to, for some guidelines, okay, how to work. As you, you know, it's very important if also to listen to the observer or our diaspora or people working outside to help us sometimes to adjust or to see maybe you are seeing more than us.
No, the reason, thank you very much. The reason I wanted to ask you to ask the question again, because it's important to give it context. First, you're in Algeria, you're based in Morocco, so your context is coming from your care about the Middle East and your local country and your people. Am I correct so far? So in the way what we do, when we're talking about a national cyber survivability strategy with a legislative roadmap, or if it's on corporate, or we were addressing the how you become prepared to leverage the opportunities of a post-COVID-19 world, there are fundamentals that have to be addressed, and some of them are huge challenges to society in the Middle East. For example, innovation is not unique to only governments, despite all of the wonderful efforts for governments to launch funds, to launch processes. The citizen need to feel that if they were to contribute, their contribution is going to be considered and is valid. They need to feel they are part of that. We are already hearing of people committing suicide as a result of COVID because of despair. This is in the Middle East. Now, what it tells me is the Middle East and the current, if you want to call it, model of operation, that's political, economic, etc., was not only ill-prepared for a precedented threat, it is currently ill-prepared to actually figure out how to come out of it, to create this solution. So I would then ask you, then you're asking, how can you then benefit from this? My question would be in what form, is Aisha asking as an individual? Are you asking as a member of government? This is different conversation because then you have different roles to implement. You see my point? And that is critical to moving forward. The challenge today in the Middle East is beyond whether we can come up with good modalities to implement processes. Because the reality here is, even Gulf states now who relied on oil as a source of revenue are running into serious deficits and now have to consider raising taxes. So the issue of prioritization to deal with this becomes more critical than ever. And then who is the decision maker who's going to prioritize? That's the challenge that I see that we are facing.
Thank you, Khalid, very much. Let me warn that we have only 8 minutes and we will reach 2 hours. So we have 2 questions written. I will read the questions and I will ask any of the panelists to address them. We have a question from Marcos Donat to all panelists and attendees. How do you manage to innovate the mindset of people and organizations to be ready for this important change? I believe people are the most important asset when we talk about digital transformation. So this is one question about another frontier of innovation. And we have a question from Ahlam Roussan from Jordan Department of Statistics. She wants to ask the focus on statistics work and insert innovation in all stages of statistical work, from the collecting of data, the issuing and analyzing of data, and to supporting decision making, especially now in the era of big data and science and technology. So we have questions about innovating the mindset and the digital transformation, and a question about innovating and transforming statistics and data. So please, any volunteer for any of these two questions. Both questions need to be answered in 5 minutes.
And I can take a shot at the first one if everybody's okay with that.
And I will maybe just a second one.
Okay.
All right, fantastic. It's changing the culture and innovation culture and the creativity culture in organizations is not a very easy thing to do. But there are things that can be instilled inside the organization that can get things rolling. Small things, but and they can kind of help the culture to organically change one day after a time. So let me just give you an example of one of the projects that I was involved in at one of the universities. We were trying to look at how to change the culture of researchers and to think about that, to see how the research can have social and economical value and not just for the sake of doing research. And there were different things that had to be done. There was a bottom-up approach and there was a top-down approach. The top-down approach, there were things that you had to that you had to let management of the organizations understand very well. There are certain steps that you had to give, like very simple level of education and awareness that you need to give to even researchers. Like you will be surprised that if you have researchers that are coming from a strictly scientific background, and if you just give them a couple of seminars about innovation and entrepreneurship, it really opens up their mind, and you will be surprised about the kind of output that they actually can create at the end. There's also things that have to do coming from top down, like certain IP policies that you need to create in place. But also, we should not really rely too much on the forcing part that is coming from organizations. There are also a lot of things that need to happen from the bottom up, like things that have to do with different clubs at the universities. There's certain type of ongoing webinars and seminars that take place. All these together, you create that kind of culture and that kind of ecosystem inside the organization to flourish. So there are certain seeds that you need to put in the organization, but it should be like a rainforest, and it should grow organically, hopefully over time. And again, don't take very big steps and very big changes inside organizations. Take things small one step at a time. I was giving the example of
incremental.
20 seconds just to finalize my point. If you talk about a university, depending on the level of maturity of the university, right, you can take different actions. If you are a very mature university, let's say, which has a technology transfer office, it would be very different than a university that has absolutely nothing. Each level of maturity has different actions that could be done. So top down and bottom up actions, I think both of them can help you achieve your objective.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Yusuf?
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Omar, and thank you for Ms. Rosan for her such question. Actually, we have to change the traditional or method of what they call statistical science or work with what's coming up new. To help with either artificial intelligence and so on. Even you mentioned about before, Dr. Haider, how much the budget it was, and when you spent money, time, effort. Nowadays, we have to change this approach completely with help either artificial intelligence, smart way of either analytical to take it from statistical science or the even stochastic approach to go for the artificial intelligence in all way of the artificial intelligence, and with also machine learning and so on. We can save a time to be more precious, sophisticated, and to use the design way, what I mentioned before, because now with the function time, with the knowledge, it will be coming to be like a zero. And this is so important issue. So we have to come with a new trend in the world, and this is the issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our time is over, but I see Khalid's hand. If you can make it in 30 seconds.
How about 25 seconds? I always try to listen, to those who ask the questions, let me just say it this way. Innovation requires leadership, and leadership starts with you yourself, you the individual. So you start by thinking innovatively. Now, if you exist in an organization, start thinking outside of the box and make propositions or proposals within the organization. They may not fit, they may not like it. Also, look outside of your organizations for other opportunities where your innovation can actually flourish. And by the way, we at the MLR group are always offering internships for those who are really out of the box thinkers. So the point of the matter here is innovation does not wait for the esteemed leader. It can start with you, and that is what I believe could be the contagion that we want to see, not COVID-19.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Khalid. Thank you very much, every one of the honorable speakers. Thank you for the attendees. This was lovely event we have here from our cozy homes and offices. We don't have to travel and take airlines and reserve in hotels and sleep on different kinds of pillows every time we attend meetings. So now I think we are started to work in a different innovative work environment, at least, that we are enjoying. We can, the meeting is recorded. We will produce minutes from recording, so therefore we will not miss any of the valuable insights here. And we will share it, of course, with you. We'll hopefully be able to produce policy advice, not only recommendations, but also policy advice to those who require it. And I really appreciate your time and effort. And let me also thank very dearly the organizing committee, those individuals behind the scene who have been working for the last 1 month on making all these preparations and Zoom designs and flyer designs and the concept note of the paper, and reaching out for participants with sometimes right email, wrong email address, and so on and so forth. So I really thank them very much, and I really thank Aisha, who is the inspirer initially of this idea, and Mohab for his great concept on how to handle innovation. Also an insight from London, from an Arab who is in diaspora, that he refuses to consider him in diaspora because his body is there, but his heart is in our region. Also the great contribution from Yusuf, who refuses also to be a typical academician who just shuffle books and papers and so on, but he reaches out to the industrial community to bring things. And thanks to those who attended and asked the right questions, hopefully that this webinar was successful. And we look forward to any ideas for any webinars in the future, and we'll be able to help as ESCWA in executing such webinar. Thank you all very much for this great webinar. I don't know, Mohab, do you have a last minute, or you are fine?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone, and I want to thank you, Dr. Haider, for co-organizing this webinar together. It was a pleasure to know all of you in person, and I hope that we can meet in person one day, and we'll make sure that we're all connected. And I think once the recording is done, I will share it with ESCWA so that you can post it online for everyone to see.
Very well, very well. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.